It's about time, eh? Welcome to Harvey's Huddle CFL. I'm your host, Jackson Harvey. I've posted the intro video. If you haven't checked that out, go and listen to it. I thought it was quite good. A little bit of history on the CFL, the Canadian Football League, and a little bit of a comparison between the NFL and the CFL in that episode, if you're interested. If not, keep listening to this because I'm going to preview the 2021 CFL season. It has been quite some time since we've had CFL action to be able to witness, both in person and on the air. Of course, 2020 resulted in the cancellation of the CFL season. No funding from the government, no way to have fans, which is most of the CFL's income. No way to have fans in the stadiums. And so there's been a year. There's been a full 2 years without football, without Canadian football. So we're excited to have this 2021 season just a couple weeks away for the Canadian Football League. If you're not already aware, the Canadian Football League is made up of two divisions. You got the West Division and the East Division. The West Division has 5 teams. You've got the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Calgary Stampeders, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the Edmonton, that was close one, Edmonton Elks, and the BC Lions. And then in the East Division, you have the Toronto Argonauts, the Montreal Alouettes, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and the Ottawa Red Blacks. Ottawa, of course, is the newest team in the CFL. They came in just 2014. However, they ended last season in the bottom part of the league. I believe they've won 1 or 2 Grey Cups since they've come in, though. So the way I want to do this is I'm going to start with the West Division since they've got the 5 teams. And then the next episode is going to be the East Division plus what I think, a short rundown of what's going to happen in the playoffs. And of course, this is just like a general, before the season starts, I think this is going to happen. And here's why. I've been taking a look at all the stats from the 2019 season. I've been taking a look at the depth charts for each team. However, it is changing a little bit as we go. Of course, you've got cut downs on the rosters happening. You've got trades happening before the regular season really starts. So this is just my preliminary. Here's what I think is going to happen before the season really starts. Sort of episodes, and then week by week I'm going to give previews for what I think is going to happen every week. And it could change. I even have this whole spreadsheet that I've used to kind of predict where everyone's records are going to be by the end of the season. And of course, those predictions are probably going to change week by week. So I'm going to go off of my week by week predictions, but also if I get some of these right here, I'm going to be talking about it also. It's a win-win situation for me. I mean, I'm right either way. So, I mean, yeah, tune in for me being right all the time. So, yeah, we're going to start off with the West Division. I'm going to go from the bottom up, so the last place team all the way to the first place team last time we played in 2019, and try to predict or at least talk about what I think is going to be the highlights of this team throughout the 2021 season and the lowlights of the team throughout the 2021 season, as well as some of their stats from 2019. I'll specify those, what they were, what that means, and what could possibly change going forward. So without further ado, let's talk about the last place team in 2019, the BC Lions. They're, of course, located in Vancouver, British Columbia. They ended 5-13 in last place in the West Division. Now, their defense was and had some struggles. Let's put it that way. They were number 7 in second down conversions allowed with 50.6%. They were tied for 7th in sacks with 28. They were second in the league with forced fumbles with 17. They were number 3 in the league in terms of knockdowns on defense with 53. They were tied for 4th in terms of turnovers with 32, and they were 8th in the CFL in terms of 2 and outs forced with just 81. Now on offense, they had a little bit of a better season, I guess you could say. It wasn't a great season. If you watch the BC Lions in 2019, you know that they struggled very, very much. Even though Mike Riley came back, of course, Mike Riley, he was with the Lions initially in his season, and then he went to the Edmonton, then it was the Edmonton Eskimos, and then came back to the BC Lions just last season, and it didn't bode well for them because their offensive line really couldn't handle any of the defensive lines in the league. You put anyone against them, even Ottawa, and it was bad. They were tied in 6th in terms of offensive touchdowns scored in the CFL with 38, not 58. They were number 4 in the CFL in terms of second down conversion percentage with 49.5%. They were 9th, dead last in sacks allowed. They allowed 58 sacks throughout the season in 2019. They're also 6th in terms of turnover ratio with -4, and they were 7th in terms of passing yard totals with 4,575. So obviously this offense really needs some help on the offensive line. The defense needs some help in almost every aspect. And so some of the highlights I see in the Lions is just that, improvements with their problem areas. They've gone ahead and they've found some key pieces on the offensive line. They've had a couple years to work on some of the more struggling members of their offensive line. And so I see this offensive line really being able to improve and lock down their protection for Mike Riley in order to get him out to another highlight of this team, the wide receiving core. This is a wide receiver group that is stacked. You got Brian Burnham, you got Javon Catoy, Lamar Durant, Shaq Johnson, Lucky Whitehead, just to name a few. I think that this is probably one of the better wide receiver rooms in the CFL right now if Mike Riley can get the protection he needs. So that offensive line is going to be crucial, not only for them, but also for the running backs. I like Shaq Cooper, I like Chris Rainey, and I love Mike Riley. I think Mike Riley's one of the best leaders in the CFL. Of course, he's won the Most Outstanding Player award many times, and I think that he's the best chance at quarterback for the BC Lions to be able to potentially make a Grey Cup appearance this season. Potentially. I don't know if it's there just because I'm not very confident in this defense on paper. I don't know how they're going to be. It could work out, but I'm not very confident with how they'll be. I got a buddy who recently signed with the BC Lions, Matt McConnell. I played with him just 1 year, and I saw the things he was able to do. I followed him a little bit throughout his journey to the CFL now, and I think he's going to be able to make a roster spot here with the Lions. He could be a game changer in the secondary. He's very, very passionate, very hard-hitting, and really understands and respects the CFL game. And so I think if some of these additions that they've been able to grab work out, like McConnell, I think that this Lions defense could be new, refreshed, and ready to take it to the CFL. And that's if those pieces can fall into place right away. If not, I'm sure they're just a couple seasons down the road from being able to be one of the more competitive defenses in the league. Next, let's take a look at the Edmonton Elks. Of course, you got the new name, you got the new logo, and it looks like a little bit of the same old Elks. But in 2019, they ended 8-10, but they did managed to snag the crossover playoff berth to the Eastern Conference, or the Eastern Division. They lost in the Eastern Division final against Hamilton, and that's it. They got pretty manhandled in that Eastern Division final. But it is what it is. They're going to shake it off. Just be happy that you managed to make it into the playoffs with an 8-10 record. The defense in 2019, they were tied for number 1 in sacks with 56. They were number 1 with 2 and outs, 102 of them. That's 40.8% of the time they forced a 2 and out. They were also second in the league in terms of opponent net yards with only 5,380 yards allowed, but they were tied in last in terms of turnovers forced with only 32. The offense, they were number 7 in the CFL in terms of points for with 406. They were number 8 in terms of offensive touchdowns scored with 37. And they were number 7 in terms of second down conversions success percentage, 47.3%. But they were number 1 in the league in terms of sacks allowed with only 25 sacks allowed in 18 games, which is quite impressive. This team is led again by the quarterback. Trevor Harris is a great leader for Edmonton, and you've got some decent parts around him there. You got Greg Allenson. He's a proven wide receiver in the CFL. He's been a great target for Trevor Riley in the past. And then you got the pickup of James Wilder Jr., running back. With him in the backfield, I've seen him play live a few times with the Argonauts, but he's incredible. The things he's able to do if he gets the protection and gets the holes that he needs is phenomenal. He can make defensive players miss in space, and he can really change games with the way that he runs. So I really like having James Wilder Jr. in the background with this Elks team. On defense, you got Vontae Diggs. He's a great defensive player. Aaron Grimes at defensive back, and Kwaku Boateng. 3 really great veteran CFL defensive players who know the game. They know how to really set the tempo and set the mood of games. And I really like those 3 coming on to one of the better defenses in the CFL and being able to add to this Elks team. In terms of lowlights, they were the worst penalty team in 2019. They had the most penalties. They had a -7 turnover ratio in 2019, and their second down conversions, like I said, it was really awful. However, I think this team can bounce back. I think they can have a decent season if their offense can produce, and if they're able to come together as a team after such a long time away from each other. I think that might be a hard thing for this Elks team to get over in a really competitive Western division. Next, you've got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They finished 3rd in the West at 11-7. They eventually became the Grey Cup champions, beating Hamilton in the finale. Highlights here: Zach Collaros. If you don't know about Zach Collaros, look him up, Google him, try to watch some of his highlights from the 2019 season. You're going to want to focus on the last part of the 2019 season. Collaros has had injury problems for most of his career. He's had concussion after concussion, and the way that he came into Winnipeg, took control of this team over Matt Nichols, of all people. Matt Nichols, of course, has been one of the mainstays in Winnipeg for years before Collaros came in and really took control of this team. Had some phenomenal games and just threw their way into the Grey Cup championship. It was incredible to watch. Beating the Stampeders and the Rough Riders and the Tiger Cats to get there. If you would have told me at the beginning or at the midpoint of the 2019 season, if you would have told me the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to go into Calgary and beat Calgary, they're going to go into Saskatchewan, which if you don't know, Winnipeg and Saskatchewan are Packers and Bears in terms of the NFL. They are not kind to each other. And to go into Saskatchewan, who Zach Collaros, also a former Rough Rider, right before he went to Winnipeg, to go into Saskatchewan, beat the Rough Riders, and then go on to the Grey Cup and beat arguably one of the better offenses we've seen in the CFL in years, in the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and hold them to under 20 points, I believe it was. Just phenomenal job by the Blue Bombers, phenomenal job by Coach O'Shea, and I'm very high on this team again in the 2021 season. And Zach Collaros, I love him. I think he's going to do fantastic things with a full season to work with. The roster is almost the exact same here for Winnipeg, so I think that's a plus. If we're talking 2020 season, I think it wouldn't be as much of a plus, just because I don't necessarily like the concept of we're not quote unquote improving, we're just getting the same players here and making the same sort of team. In a way, I know it's kind of different, and it is very much different after 2 years of playing. I think that having a very similar roster helps this team, because there's a lot less things to get caught up on for most of this team. You got a great wide receiver core again with the Blue Bombers. You got Andrew Harris. I have Andrew Harris written out in all caps locks. He is probably the best running back in the CFL, if not one of the best running backs in CFL history. And the way that he punishes defenders with the way I said defenders weird there. Sorry about that. The way that he punishes defenders with his running style is incredible. And he's able, just like I said about James Wilder, but more so, he changes the game with the way he runs. On defense, you got Adam Big Hill, Willie Jefferson, and Jackson Jeffcoat, three of the better defensive players in the entire CFL. Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat, couple of the best defensive linemen in the CFL, and they are a threat when they line up alongside each other. It is probably one of the opposing offensive linemen's greatest nightmares to see Jeffcoat and Jefferson right in front of them, because you know something's going to happen. They also took the least amount of penalties in the CFL in 2019 with 128. Coach O'Shea, I've noticed with his teams and with Winnipeg teams in the past that he tends to keep them in line pretty well, and I think that goes a long way. One of the only lowlights that I have, I mean, I talked about the little changes and the risk that happens to a team. I said that in my NFL channel. I said that about the Buccaneers. I don't know how much I like that you're signing all 22 starters from the Super Bowl back onto your team. Try to improve some way, but as well, it could work out because you guys already won a Super Bowl together. You also got Justin Medlock. He's gone. Who's going to fill in that spot? Medlock, of course, was a mainstay at kicker. If you saw him coming on, you knew 9.9 times out of 10 the field goal's going through the uprights and you're getting 3 points. With him gone, where's the real consistency going on at kicker? Is there going to be a consistency at kicker? You're going to have some problems with the kicking position. We'll just have to wait and see. In terms of stats in the 2019 season, they were number 2 in terms of offensive touchdowns scored with 55. They were number 5 in terms of second down conversions on offense with 48.9%. They were first in the league in terms of rushing yards and rushing attempts on offense with 2,663 yards on 442 attempts. And they were last. They were last in the league in terms of passing yards with 3,819 yards on 508 attempts. Of course, that probably would have changed a little bit more if Collaros had been able to do what he did late in the season with this team throughout the season. But alas, he came in later in the season and won a Grey Cup, so we can give them a little bit of a pass on that. We'll probably see that passing yard stat be a little bit higher in the 2021 season. On defense, the Blue Bombers in 2019, they were number 4 in second down conversions allowed with 44.9%. They were number 4 in turnover ratio as well with +7. They were number 1 in the CFL in terms of knockdowns with 78, and number 1 in terms of forced fumbles with 23. And lastly, they were number 2 in turnovers forced. They forced 45 turnovers throughout the 2019 season. Next, let's head to Calgary. We got the Stampeders. They were 12-6, second in the West, and they lost in the Western semifinals to Winnipeg. This Calgary team, it's kind of weird to compare them to an NFL team because of there's obvious differences in the rosters there, but if you look at the success that the Patriots had with Tom Brady there in New England, you could probably translate a little of that success and a little of the winning pedigree that the Patriots had for so many years to the current Calgary Stampeders. They have been a mainstay in the top 3 teams in the CFL for a decade or two. They've been fantastically coached with Huffnagel coaching them, and now you got Dave Dickinson being coaching them for a few seasons. This is a winning pedigree team. They have a 15-season playoff streak. They have made the playoffs for 15 seasons straight, and that is just fantastic. That's to be applauded, and it's to be respected throughout the CFL. Their stats in the 2019 season on offense, they were number 5 in offensive points scored, number 5 in offensive touchdowns scored, 438 points, 41 touchdowns. They were number 6 in second down conversions, 47.7%. Number 2 in sacks allowed with only 34 sacks allowed. Number 9 in rushing yards, 1,283. And number 2 in the league in passing yards with 5,622. On defense, they're number 5 in the league in terms of second down conversions allowed, 48.4%. They were number 1 in terms of turnovers forced with 47. If you were listening, Winnipeg was only 2 behind with 45. Number 2 in the league in terms of points off turnovers with 113. They only were number 5 in sacks on defense with 35, but they were second in the league in terms of 2 and outs forced with 97. Now, Calgary has a lot of pluses throughout the years. They've had a lot of great players, a lot of great teams, and I'm kind of worried about them this season. Highlights, though, you've got Bo Levi Mitchell. I'm worried about him because of injuries. He only played 11 games in the 2019 season. You got Kamar Jordan on in the wide receiver core there, and he's a good receiver. You've got a decent offensive line. I mean, they only allowed 34 sacks in the 2019 season, which is awesome. You've got good protection for your quarterbacks. You've got a decent secondary. Brandon Dozier is really the one that I'd look for. They lost, and part of my lowlights, they had some really bad departures at wide receiver, at defensive line. You had Trey Roberson. He's now in the NFL. You lost Cordero Law on the defensive line. You lost Reggie Bagleton in the wide receiver room. You lost Eric Rogers in the wide receiver room, which all of those players were the loss of those players is going to be detrimental to this team, in my opinion. I think it's going to be very hard for Bo Levi Mitchell to come back from injury and be able to throw as well as he did before the season, or before the 2019 season injury that affected him and made him miss 7 games. However, if there's any team that is going to juice out some of the talent potential out of these players that they've that they've brought in to fill those major spots, it's Dave Dickenson and the Calgary Stampeders. Just like, and there's a comparison to the Patriots with Bill Belichick. There were some wide receivers that Tom Brady won Super Bowls with that you were like, who the hell are you? What are you doing here? And I think that Calgary has the opportunity to continue to do that. And we'll just have to wait and see if Dickenson and the Stampeders will be able to pull that out. I don't have very high hopes, but I know that if there's one team to do it, it is the Stampeders. And finally, we've got the first place team in the Western Division in 2019, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They went 13-5 and lost in the West Division final to Winnipeg. On offense in 2019, they were number 2 in terms of second down conversions, 50.3%. They were tied for 4th in the league with sacks allowed, only 37. They were number 1 in terms of 2-and-outs, so they had the least amount of 2-and-outs in the CFL with only 76 throughout the entire 2019 season. They were number 1 in terms of turnovers on offense with only 25 turnovers committed. They were number 1 in terms of completion percentage with 71.5% of passes completed, and number 1 in terms of rushing touchdowns with 26 rushing touchdowns throughout the 2019 season. On defense, they were number 2 in terms of passing yards allowed with 4,119. They were tied for number 1 with the Elks in terms of sacks with 56. They were tied for 9th in terms of forced fumbles. That's last in the league with only 12 forced fumbles in the 2019 season. They were number 3 in terms of 2-and-outs forced with 96. Number 7 in terms of turnovers forced with 33. But they were first in the league in terms of points off of turnovers with 116. Now, there's a lot to like about this Rough Riders team as well. You got Cody Fajardo. He's the quarterback for the Rough Riders. He threw 4,302 yards, 18 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions in the 2019 campaign. You got William Powell at running back. He is shifty. If you've got Andrew Harris is number 1, James Wilder is number 2, I got Powell at number 3 in terms of running backs in the CFL. Shaq Evans, Kyron Moore, they're helping out and leading this wide receiver group for the Rough Riders. And then you've got Ed Gainey at halfback, which is, if you're coming over from the NFL, halfback is generally a name for the running back position. But this is, if you've got a cornerback, not a quarterback, cornerback, you got the halfback in between the cornerback and the defensive line. So if I say the term halfback, it's a member of the secondary on defense. You got Ed Gainey at halfback, and you got Micah Johnson on the defensive line, and Lucius Purifoy, I always butcher his name, on the defense as well. Another thing to look out for, former NFL quarterback Paxton Lynch is on this Rough Riders roster, so if Fajardo goes down somehow, some way, you got some NFL talent coming on the field. If he gets the number 2 spot, he'll be in charge of third down conversions, so we could be seeing some Paxton Lynch in the green and white there for the Rough Riders. In terms of lowlights, they lost Cameron Judge, they lost Solomon Elamimian, they lost Derek Moncrief, and they lost Charleston Hughes. Huge members of their 2019 defense. So it'll be interesting to see, again, just like the Stampeders, are they going to be able to fill the giant shoes that Judge, Elamimian, Moncrief, and Hughes left to fill? It's going to be difficult for anyone to do that. But we'll have to see if the Rough Riders will be able to have the same success on defense without those key 4 players. Now, looking at this condensed 14-game schedule that's going on in the CFL, I've gone ahead and looked at like I said at the beginning of the show, I've looked at the schedules. I've kind of made up what I think is going to be wins and losses for each team. I've got Edmonton and Calgary tied for last place in the West Division, and some people might think I'm crazy. I'm not too high on the Stampeders. I'm not too high on those losses, like I just said. But who knows? I could be wrong. I had them at 5-9 at the bottom. In third place, I've got the Lions, 8-6. And then in first and second place, I've got Winnipeg and Saskatchewan tied at 12-2. Winnipeg at number 1, Saskatchewan at number 2. So that's where I think the West Division is going to end up this season. Who knows what happens? If you haven't already, go check out my Instagram page at Harvey's Huddle Can. So CAN at the end of Harvey's Huddle. Or check me out on Facebook, Harvey's Huddle Canada. And I'm also on Harvey's Huddle Canada. I think it's Harvey's Huddle CFL. Anyways, look for Harvey's Huddle. You'll find it, as well as on YouTube. I'll have this posted for you guys in video form. My face won't be on it. I'm still working on that, but you'll have a nice little logo to look at, or to not look at, as you listen to this episodes going on. I'm going to post the East preview soon as well, and I hope to hear your opinions on my take of the West Division. Hit me up on those social media platforms, and thank you so much for listening. This has been Harvey's Huddle. I'm Jackson Harvey. Take care.